r/the10thDentist. Starman926 says, second-degree murder is generally worse than first-degree murder, and it's confusing to me that the former is generally considered less severe. Edit. Before commenting, read the whole post if you can. I'm getting a handful of comments having questions about my perspective that I already answer in my, admittedly long-ass, post. My conclusion is ultimately slightly evolved from the content of the post title itself, though I still stand by it. For those who don't know, in the US, a murder is primarily legally separated into two different categories: murder in the first degree and murder in the second degree. First degree murder generally means that the killing was premeditated, meaning it was planned a substantial amount of time before the actual killing occurred. Second degree murder means the opposite: it's still an intentional killing, but the decision was made in the spur of the moment. That's a simplification, but that's the general distinction. The thinking is that a premeditated killing is more distinctly evil, as the killer has already weighed the morality of their decision and the consequences that come with it, but still chosen to kill. For this reason, first degree murder is usually considered the more severe crime, and thus receives harsher punishments and sentences. While I understand this perspective, I feel like it misframes the base function of prisons. It's a punishment, yes, but first and foremost it's a way to remove malefactors from society. The threat of prison as a punishment and as a deterrent from committing crimes is helpful. But first and foremost, prison is a way to remove harmful people from society and separate them from the people they may harm. Or at least, that's how it ought to be. For this reason, I think second-degree murder is generally worse. Someone who decides to take a human life in an emotional spur of the moment decision is by far a bigger danger to society at large than someone who planned out an intentional homicide. Victims of first-degree murders are frequently people who already had a relationship with the offender. Victims of second-degree murders can be anyone. Now, obviously, homicide is a delicate subject and there are plenty of exceptions to the trend. A serial killer who meticulously plans the gruesome murder of an innocent stranger is certainly more evil than someone who hastily pulled a trigger during a routine drug deal gone wrong. Most states even recognize crimes of passion as less severe, giving slight leeway towards people who are provoked into killing by an extreme emotional disturbance. So I suppose my issue doesn't inherently lie with which degree is necessarily worse, so much as I think that determining the severity of a homicide based around whether it was planned or not is a much less helpful metric than instead looking at the extent of how immoral the decision was. But ultimately, a majority of the time, society at large is put much more at risk by someone who does a random, erratic act of violence than it is by someone who bumped off their spouse for insurance money. Is the latter more evil? Probably. But are they likely to reoffend and put me and you at risk? Not really. Takoyaki says, that's an interesting viewpoint and I'll upvote, since I didn't initially agree. Rocktopod says, yeah, this belongs in a better sub like /r/change Emma view, but maybe op doesn't want their view changed. Starman926 says, does anyone really actively want their opinions changed for them? Haha. Regardless, I'm not stubborn about it and casually wrote up the post on my train home. I still feel that I'm correct in saying second-degree murderers pose a greater threat to society as a whole, and that basing the severity of sentencing on the presence of premeditation isn't a particularly great standard. Some people here seem to be arguing with someone they assume is saying that second-degree murder should be subject to harsher penalties than first-degree murderers. It's a sensical extrapolation, but not what I specifically said, and definitely not what I believe. I had an opinion I knew was unpopular, and this was the first place I thought to share it. Snickums says, humans are emotional stupid apes. It can be scarily easy for someone to just snap and do something drastic in the heat of the moment, but that only means that person lost control for a few fatal seconds. First degree murder means someone either lost control and did not regain it for many moments, possibly even hours, days or even years. Or that they were in control the entire time and had no problem murdering another human being. Either possibility puts them as a much larger overall threat to society than someone who merely had a single moment of anger. r/the10thDentist. ThistonIdwiz says. Saying nobody owes you anything just screams I don't respect myself. I won't even make this a long post, but it's pretty much the title. Yeah, nobody owes you anything, but if you don't expect/require some level of respect for yourself and time, then that's on you. Yeah, nobody owes you a message back. However, if someone had any decency and respect for the other person, then they would at least say something back. Yeah, sometimes anxiety and depression play a factor in people doing that, but that isn't always the case. A lot of the time people are able, capable, free, and happy to respond back, they just don't care to do so with you. No, nobody owes you respect, but to not to respect yourself and let others not respect you is ridiculous. It has nothing to do with people owing you anything, it has everything to do with respecting your own self, respecting the time and effort to even give to a person, and not have it reciprocated. You don't have to walk around with the sentiment that people owe you anything to simply see the disrespectful tendencies people give you and not be okay with it. Is it respect? Is it pride? Is it ego? Could be any of those things, but that's humans for you. No, I don't owe anything to anybody myself, but I also do owe some level of decency and respect to others. Even as far as being out and about, someone holding the door or elevator for another person. Yeah, nobody owes the door being held open for them. That doesn't make it any less selfish on their part, and that doesn't mean others shouldn't respect themselves in that process. It's crazy how much society condones selfishness. NothingFace0116 says. I won't even make this a long post. Proceeds to write a full dissertation. Judd3NT says. It's like 13 sentences. It's like some people have never held a book before. Teenum says. I think that in some ways we do owe basic respect to each other, and it fits in that whole your rights end, where someone else's start thing. Redbeard 4006 says. Nobody owes me respect in no way implies I'll continue to associate with people who don't respect me. It just acknowledges that people are not obligated, and you make your choices of how you respond. You have fundamentally understood what people mean when they say this, I think. Hopeful Strategy 8282 says. This is one of those things that is an amazing piece of advice to remind yourself of and keep you grounded, but is often deeply insulting when said to another person. When you think it in your head, it reminds you not to be stuck up and to accept things, but say it to someone else, and you're invalidating whatever problem they want solved. r/the10thDentist. Minecraft Map says. Jack Black is the best person they could've picked to play Steve. Given they seem to be set on having the movie be live action, with real people, I feel like Jack Black is a good choice to play Steve. Think about what the alternatives could've been. If they went with a stoic, serious Steve, what I feel like most fans of the game think Steve is like, they probably would've picked The Rock, or someone like that to play him. I like The Rock, but has already been the lead in both the recent Jumanji movies. Seeing him pop up again in another video game movie would make this movie even more stale than it already is. Jack Black is a good choice because has a direct contrast to what the usual super experienced guy is like. There's also a reasonable probability that they would have gone with a more neutral guy like Chris Pratt. However, characters like that are usually better as the main character, as the audience can relate to them more. I have my doubts about the movie as a whole, and I feel like it should have been fully animated. However, given its live action, I think Jack Black as Steve could be entertaining. Slurpbajil says. Of course, the only three actors, Jack Black, Chris Pratt and The Rock. Mobius Peveril says, Hollywood executives be like. Slurp Jill says, and here comes Kevin Hart. Tobber the Gypsy says, who the frick is Steve? Skyrocket says, Stephen H. Minecraft, the game is named after him. Moore's Lauer says, they should've chosen famous astronaut Buzz Aldrin. He might be a little old, but as the first man on the moon, he has just the right experience to know what it means to learn and train for the conditions of a totally different world. Best throwaway ever 5 says, Steve is a skinny dark-skinned guy. Jack Black is a fat white guy with a huge beard. There is no way this could have possibly been the right choice. Also, if the plot of the movie is that Steve has been there for a while, why would he be fat? You're constantly exercising in Minecraft. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.